I was talking to my neighbor Margaret the other day. She's 78, sharp as a tack, and always on the go. But she said something that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "Some days, even with family around, I feel like I'm the only person left on earth." Can you relate to that? That quiet ache of loneliness, even when life seems full on the surface. Well, if you're nodding along right now, I want you to know something. You're not alone. And more importantly, you don't have to stay that way. Because here's the truth. Friendship isn't just for kids or young adults. In fact, building meaningful connections after 70 might just be one of the most powerful things you can do for your health, your happiness, and even your longevity. Today, we're tackling a topic so many of us brush under the rug: loneliness later in life. But instead of dwelling on the problem, we're going to focus on solutions, simple, surprising, and doable ways to create friendships that light up your days. And the best part? No apps, no screens, no complicated tech required. Just good old-fashioned human connection. Let's dive in. Now, when I say friendship, I'm not talking about collecting hundreds of acquaintances or forcing yourself to be the life of the party. What we're after are those meaningful connections, the kind where you laugh until your sides hurt, share stories that matter, and feel truly seen. And guess what? Those friendships often start in the most unexpected places. Let's start with something you might not expect: your hobbies. That's right. The things you already love to do could be your golden ticket to meeting kindred spirits. Take my friend Harold, for example. He'd been feeling isolated after retiring until he stumbled upon a flyer for a weekly woodworking group at his local library. At first, he worried, what if I'm the oldest one there? What if I don't fit in? But you know what happened? He walked into that room and found a dozen folks just like him. People with sawdust in their veins and stories to share. Here's the secret. Hobby groups aren't just about the activity, they're about the ritual. Whether it's a gardening club, a painting class, or even a monthly book discussion, showing up regularly gives you something to look forward to and a built-in conversation starter. No awkward small talk needed. Just focus on the shared passion, whether it's nurturing roses or debating mystery novels, and let the rest unfold naturally. Now, if the idea of joining a group feels daunting, here's a tip: start small. You don't need to commit to a year-long course. Look for one-time workshops or drop-in sessions at your community center or local nursery. And here's a little trick. Bring something to share, like cuttings from your garden or a plate of cookies. It's amazing how a simple gesture can break the ice and turn strangers into friends. All right, let's talk about our second surprising friendship builder, and this one might catch you off guard. Ready? Volunteering. Now, I know what you're thinking. I've spent decades giving to others. Isn't it time to put myself first? But here's the thing. Giving your time doesn't just help others. It fills your cup too. Take it from Ruth, a viewer who wrote to me last month. After losing her husband, she felt adrift, until she started helping out at her town's senior lunch program. She told me, "At first I went just to get out of the house. But now, those mornings in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, swapping recipes with the other volunteers, it feels like family." Why does this work so well? Because volunteering puts you shoulder to shoulder with people who share your values. Whether it's mentoring kids at the library, helping at an animal shelter, or serving meals, you're bonding over something bigger than yourselves. And that creates a foundation for friendship that's rock solid. Now, I'll let you in on a little wisdom I've learned over the years. The best friendships often grow slowly, like a sturdy oak tree. You don't need to force it. Just show up, be present, and let time do the rest. Maybe you'll start by chatting about the tomato plants you're both growing, or laughing over how the shelter's newest puppy keeps stealing everyone's gloves. Before you know it, you'll realize you've found your people. Now, I know what some of you might be feeling right now, but what if I try these things and still feel out of place? Here's my answer: that's okay. Not every group will click, and that's normal. The magic happens when you keep showing up, for yourself as much as for others. So here's your homework before we move on. Grab a piece of paper and write down one hobby you've always loved, or one cause that tugs at your heart. Then, make one small move this week. Call your local community center. Ask the librarian if they host any clubs. Or simply strike up a conversation with someone at the dog park or the grocery store. You've got nothing to lose, and so much joy to gain. Up next, we're going to explore 3 more unexpected paths to friendship, including one that's probably within walking distance of your home right now. But for now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever made a friend later in life through a hobby or volunteering? Share your story in the comments below. It might just inspire someone else to take that first brave step. Until then, remember this: the world is still full of wonderful people waiting to meet you. Let's go find them together. You know, one of the most beautiful things about friendship is how it can bloom in the unlikeliest places, even in the cracks of our everyday routines. Take my morning walks, for instance. For years, I'd stroll the same path, nod at the same faces, and think nothing of it. But then one day, I decided to slow down, to really see the person behind the good morning smile. And that's how I met Clara, a fellow walker who's now one of my dearest friends. She's 82, knits scarves for shelter dogs, and tells the best stories about her years as a jazz pianist. All because I paused long enough to ask, "What's your secret to staying so vibrant?" That brings us to our third surprising friendship builder: reconnecting with old threads. Now, I'm not talking about scrolling through social media or tracking down every person you've ever met. I mean those relationships that slipped away quietly over the years. The neighbor who moved across town, the coworker you lost touch with after retirement, even the cousin you haven't seen since family reunions stopped. Let me tell you about Sam, a viewer from Ohio. After his wife passed, he found an old address book in a drawer, filled with names from his bowling league days. On a whim, he sent a few postcards. Just simple notes. Thinking of you. How's life treating you these days? A week later, his phone rang. It was Leo, his former teammate, who'd also been widowed. They started meeting for coffee every Thursday, a ritual that's now lasted 6 years. Sam told me it wasn't about reliving the past. It was about discovering who we'd both become. Here's the magic of rekindling old connections. You've already got history. You don't have to start from scratch. Maybe it's sending a letter to someone who mattered to you once, or inviting that friendly face from your exercise class out for tea. And if you're worried it's too late, let me remind you, it's never too late. The people who light up your life are worth the reach. Now, let's talk about our fourth idea, and this one's hiding in plain sight. Your neighborhood. Yes, that quiet street you've lived on for years could be a goldmine of friendship potential. But here's the key: you've got to be the one to spark it. Take Marjorie, who lives in a condo complex. For years, she'd wave at her neighbors but never really talk to them. Then one summer, she put a sign on her patio: Friday lemonade hour, 3 p.m. All welcome. She set out a pitcher, some cookies, and folding chairs. That first week, 2 people showed up. By August, she had a standing group of 8, a mix of widows, retirees, and a spunky 90-year-old who'd been a circus performer. They swapped travel stories, debated crossword clues, and even started a tomato-growing competition. Why does this work? Because small, consistent gatherings take the pressure off. It's not a party, it's a habit. A weekly coffee on your porch. A monthly potluck where everyone brings a dish from their childhood. No fancy setups, just a willingness to say, "Come as you are." And here's a little secret: most people are just as hungry for connection as you are. They're waiting for someone to make the first move. Why not let that someone be you? Now, our fifth strategy might surprise you, because it's not about meeting new people at all. It's about deepening the connections you already have. Let me explain. Think about the folks you interact with regularly: the cashier who remembers your coffee order, the librarian who saves new mystery novels for you, even the mail carrier who waves every morning. These are your micro-connections, and with a little intention, they can blossom into something richer. My friend Irene did this beautifully. Every Tuesday, she'd chat with Ben, the gardener at her apartment complex. Over time, she learned he'd been a teacher in another life and a voracious reader. One day, she lent him her copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, a book he'd never read. The next week, they spent an hour discussing it under the maple tree. Now, they swap books every month and meet for pie on his birthday. All because she saw him as more than the gardener. She saw a friend waiting to happen. Here's the lesson. Friendship doesn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as asking, "What's your story?" and really listening to the answer. That barista who makes your latte? She might be caring for her ailing mother. The man who walks his terrier past your window every afternoon? He could be a retired chef with killer soup recipes. When you approach the world with curiosity, you'll find friends everywhere you look. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but what if I'm shy? What if I don't know what to say? Let me ease your mind with 2 tools that never fail. First, compliments. I've always admired how you keep your roses blooming. Or, your laugh is contagious, it brightens my day. Second, questions. How long have you lived here? Or, what's the best book you've read lately? People love to talk about themselves, and you'll learn so much by letting them. Before we wrap up this part, I want to leave you with a challenge. This week, choose one of these ideas, whether it's hosting a lemonade hour, reaching out to an old acquaintance, or simply striking up a conversation with someone you see often. Then, come back here and tell me how it went. Did you discover a shared passion? Hear a story that made you laugh? I can't wait to hear about it. And remember, every great friendship begins with a single hello. Yours could be just around the corner. There's a saying I've always loved. Friendship is the golden thread that ties the heart of the world together. And you know what? That thread doesn't fray with age. It grows stronger, richer, more vibrant. Over these last few chats, we've explored so many ways to weave that thread into your life, even if it's been years since you felt truly connected. But before we wrap up, let's talk about the most important ingredient of all, you. Because here's what I've learned from folks like Sam, Marjorie, and Irene. Building friendships isn't about changing who you are. It's about showing up as yourself, your stories, your quirks, your hard-won wisdom, and trusting that there's someone out there who'll cherish exactly that. Take my friend Arthur, for instance. At 82, he told me he'd resigned himself to eating most meals alone. But then he remembered how much he loved chess, a passion he'd set aside decades ago. He plopped a folding table and a chessboard in his building's lobby with a sign, "Challenge me. I'll go easy on beginners." At first, just a few curious folks stopped by. Now, he's got a rotating group of 15 regulars, teens, retirees, even a nurse on her lunch break. He says, "We don't just play chess. We talk about life. And sometimes, we just sit in comfortable silence." That's friendship too. Now, if you take one thing from this conversation, let it be this. Friendship isn't a numbers game. It's not about how many people you know or how often you meet. It's about those moments when you feel a little less alone in the world. Maybe that's sharing a crossword puzzle with your neighbor, or sitting side by side with a volunteering buddy, peeling potatoes without saying a word. Those quiet, ordinary moments? They're extraordinary. So let's tie this all together. We've talked about joining hobby groups, volunteering, reaching out to old connections, creating neighborhood rituals, and deepening everyday interactions. But at their core, all these strategies boil down to 2 simple truths. Be curious. Be brave. Curiosity asks, "I wonder what their story is?" Brave says, "Let's find out." Curiosity notices the woman at the bus stop who always wears bright scarves. Brave sits beside her and says, "That color looks lovely on you." Curiosity remembers the colleague you lost touch with. Brave picks up the phone and says, "I've been thinking about you." Now, I won't pretend every effort will lead to a lifelong bond. Some seeds you plant won't sprout, and that's okay. But here's the miracle. You only need a few to bloom. One conversation that makes you feel understood. One person who texts just to say, "Saw this and thought of you." That's enough to transform loneliness into belonging. And if doubt creeps in, what if they don't like me? What if I'm bothering them? Remember this. The world is kinder than we often give it credit for. Most people are hungry for exactly what you're offering. A little warmth, a little attention, a shared laugh. So here's my final challenge to you. Start today. Not tomorrow, when the weather's better, or when you feel more ready. Today. Send the text. Smile at the stranger in line. Dust off your old guitar and invite someone to sing along. And when those voices of hesitation whisper, "Why bother?" you tell them, "Because I'm worth it. Because I still have so much to give." And when you take that step, big or small, come back here and tell me about it. Did you revive an old tradition, like Marjorie's lemonade hour? Discover a new passion, like Arthur's chess club? Your story matters. It might be the nudge someone else needs to open their door, or their heart, a little wider. Before we say goodbye, I want to leave you with a thought. Years from now, you won't remember every detail of these days. But you'll remember the people who made you feel alive. The ones who showed up with soup when you were under the weather, who mailed you a silly postcard just because, who sat with you in the quiet moments when words weren't needed. Those people are out there. And they're waiting for you. In community centers, at park benches, in libraries, and yes, even in your own living room. All you have to do is begin. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this resonated with you, pay it forward. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We've got so much more to explore together. Ways to stay vibrant, joyful, and fiercely independent at any age. Until next time, remember, your life is a story still being written. Make it one full of connection, courage, and cake shared with friends. Here's to your next chapter. It's going to be beautiful.